yeah, it was the first day back at my desk today, so I'm playing catch up a little bit.
Of course, it was the concluding conference for preventing plastic pollution, right?
Yes, so that happened on Tuesday last week, and then we were down in Cornwall for Wednesday and Thursday um, for an end of project conference for Interreg, so the funders, because they've got a lot of projects coming to a close, which was at the Eden project, which was really nice. So it was good.
Cool. That is nice.
Yeah.
Hi, Gloria. Um,
Hi. Hi, everyone.
thanks for
Hey,
thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Quick introduction. Top corner is Chico. He's doing the tech stuff for tonight, sorting out the stream for YouTube and that kind of thing. I mean, we've had sort of 100 and something people on occasion. We don't normally get that many people. And then Matteo is going to do the sort of questions and all the rest of it. I'll maybe of interest. Matteo's Ticinese. He's a river ecologist based in Switzerland, but a kind of compatriot if it wasn't for modern nation states.
esatto.
Kind of, yeah. Thanks. I'm Gloria. I work for the Southeast Service Trust with Jack and Hannah, and I manage the project Preventing Plastic Pollution. I don't know if you've heard about it from Jack already, otherwise it would be in our presentation shortly.
Yeah, sure. So we're planning to go live in sort of 10 minutes, something like that. So now everything's set up and running. I'm going to go and make myself a drink in a minute, just so we can kind of chill out. You missed it, Gloria. I was saying, so we'll go to the presentation and then Matteo will be fielding questions from anybody who might be watching, and we also have some questions ourselves. So then we'll try and turn it into a kind of conversation after the presentation.
Sure.
Hence the name TFC in conversation.
Absolutely.
Are there any sort of questions at this point before we get started? You guys would like to ask anything you want to know about?
For us, sorry, Jack. Or
Sorry?
is that questions we have or questions for us?
Yeah. Questions you have about sort of, I don't know, the Fly Connection or what we're doing or just general stuff, or I'm just trying to sort of spin out the next 10 minutes in a sort of friendly, chatty way while the other guys are just beavering away on their stuff.
Don't have any questions. Do you guys meet in person? Do you have like a community group that you meet all together?
I mean, we start. Yeah, well, I'm the best man, well, witness rather, witness at Chico's wedding in early May, so I'll be going there. I said to you before, I've known Chico for a long time now. When did we meet Chico? Like 2015, something like that. And Matteo just about, I think 15. And then Matteo met him in sort of 2016, 17. He was at the time a fishing guide at Switzerland, so I went fishing with him. Then we became friends. And then Chico there, and then we became friends. And then the people who kind of got involved. So yeah, we try and meet up. We're going to go fishing later in the year, and COVID's made it hard. But I'm now trying to organise. So on the 1st of April, I'm doing a day on the Wandle for sort of people sort of in and around sort of Fly Connection. And we're going to do a bit of fishing, do a trash collection, talk about the history of the Wandle, the rest of it, all my sort of passion subjects. So that will be the first kind of community meet up that's not just been the core team. So there are a few other people who aren't in the chat tonight who are a part of it. So we're hoping that it's going to be our kind of first event for trash anglers, like a sort of cool little launch thing, and then we'll see.
So Trash Anglers is sort of a side branch of the Fly Connection. Is that right?
Yeah, it's an.
Yeah. I haven't actually. No, I've seen your Instagram pages. Can you send it? Could you send it in the chat? Or...
Yeah, if you just go to www.theflyconnection.com, you'll find it there. Actually, I'm going to put that in my little intro text. That's a good. Thanks for that, Gloria.
Sorry, I have a technical question.
Yeah.
Are you going to share our presentation and move from a slide to another, or are we going to do it?
Good question. I think it might be best if we allow them to share screen, Chico. You're the host, I think, and then they can share and run through the slides at their pace.
It's on mine, so if I can share my screen and then Gloria, I can just change your slides. Does that work?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
By the way, the link for the live stream of this event is now in the chat in Zoom. So if you want to share it.
And guys, one thing. So we are already online streaming. When should I post the link on Instagram? Right now?
I would. Well, yeah. Let me go and grab a glass of water and other bits and pieces, and then when you tell me, you post it. I think we'll still actually start on the hour formally. So then I'll start with a kind of introduction, a couple of paragraphs, and just introduce you guys, and then we'll roll. Okay, I'll be right back.
Yep.
I can now, it's letting me share my screen, so shall I test it? Yeah? Let's try. Can you see?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you just see the slides, not the presenter view?
Yeah. Does it? Let's try and go to the next slide because I see it perfectly. No, I think it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, is that okay?
No, I think it's fine. Yeah. And I think you have my audio delayed as well.
Yeah.
No, it's me. I'm testing YouTube. It's me. Sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Jack, what can you see? Can you see normal slides, or can you see?
What on my screen in Zoom now? I see normal slides.
Amazing. I think we're all right.
Sweet.
Cool. Yeah. How's that? Yep.
It's life, isn't it? It adds a certain air of kind of authenticity to it if it's not absolutely spot on.
We just need someone to start talking whilst they're on mute, and then we'll be there.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Chico, honestly, I see it very well.
Oh, sorry.
I've got it up as well, Shika. I mean, I think looking at how it was on my screen and how the screen looks now, it's probably fine. There's a slight delay on the stream, so it's going to come up in a minute. I'll tell you then.
It looks fabulous, honestly, really. Yeah, but who cares, honestly? Online? So,
Right,
ready.
share it. Thanks, man. I mean, everyone should be wearing their Fly Connection shirt, right? They were Christmas gifts. Got to stay on brand. Nothing's going now. Right, well, the link's up. When it clicks over to the hour, then I guess I shall kick off with the introduction text. There we go. So I think we can make a start, guys. So welcome to another Fly Connection in Conversation, the first of this year. For those of you who joined us before, hello again. And for those of you who haven't, I'm going to say a quick word about Fly Connection. So we're a global community that share, discuss, and enthuse about our passion, fly fishing. But more than that, we're also a community dedicated to citizen science and engagement to holding true to the principle that we should leave the river every day better than we find it, looking at the core of what we do. I'll be your host for this evening. I'm Jack Hogan, and I'm a river restorer who lives in the UK. And I'm delighted to introduce our guests who, outside of the Fly Connection, are also my colleagues at South East Rivers Trust. Gloria is a preventing plastic pollution project manager with the Trust. She works on the catchment of the River Medway and to pilot a series of approaches and new ways to understand and remove plastic from local waterways. Her work applies a catchment-based approach in collaboration with local organisations, communities and businesses to enable long-lasting legacy of behavioural change towards our rivers. Hannah Dry works for the Trust as a Preventing Plastic Pollution Project Officer. She's involved in the delivery of cleanup events, community engagement projects and education around the role rivers play in plastic pollution, helping to stimulate lasting behavioural change. So tonight they will be speaking with us on rivers, pollution and what we can do about it. But before they start, we want to thank them both very much for making time for us this evening. It's very much appreciated. So now if we turn over to you, Hannah and Gloria, and perhaps we can go to the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us. I'll just share my screen.
Thanks for having us. It's really nice.
No, it's a pleasure.
Right. Let me know if you can see it.
I think that looks good.
Yeah, perfect. Amazing. So yeah, thank you so much for having us along. So we're here to talk to you today in largely about a project that we both work on called Preventing Plastic Pollution. So firstly, who are we? As Jack rightly said, we both work for the South East Rivers Trust. So this is a trust that works across 12 catchments around the southeast of England. We've got Gloria, who will be talking very shortly. So she is a manager and an activity coordinator for the partnership within the Preventing Plastic Pollution project. And we have myself, I'm Hannah, and I'm a project officer. So I am involved with a lot of the practical delivery of PPP, Preventing Plastic Pollution is what we call it, activities. So before we dive into the project, I thought it would probably be good to just lay a bit of a foundation for plastic production. I don't think many of these statistics will come as a shock. I think a lot of people already know that the plastic situation is pretty bleak. So plastic production is projected to triple by 2060. In 2019, we produced 460 million metric tons of plastic across the globe. So that production is only going to increase. Over 50% of plastic is discarded at the end of its life, so it doesn't end up either being recycled or incinerated for energy. Some of this plastic could end up in landfill, but I think a vast majority of it will end up being discarded within the wider environment, and that's lost. The packaging sector is responsible for almost half of plastic produced, so they are a big contributor of plastic pollution. And finally, the UN has recognised that plastic pollution is one of the biggest global challenges that we face. It's also intrinsically linked with the fossil fuel industry. So if we're going to meet our targets of net zero, then plastic reduction has to be a part of that conversation. So focusing in then for plastic in rivers, around 80% of marine plastic does actually come from our rivers. So I think a lot of people are aware of the problem of marine plastic pollution, but actually I think possibly less people are aware of the role that rivers play in driving that pollution. We know that macro and microplastics are both present in river environments, but the long-term effects of microplastics and chemicals in rivers aren't really fully understood yet, and that can be quite scary when you're thinking about how much plastic we have in our river ecosystem. It's important as well to look at macroplastics because the legacy of plastic in rivers is so broad, and we don't know the effects of microplastics yet. But macroplastics, we need to remove those before they become an issue in terms of microplastics. So they're much easier to remove from those environments. So they're really important. They're a really important part of removing the legacy of plastic pollution in rivers. So I'm going to hand over to Gloria, who is going to give you a bit more of an overview about the Preventing Plastic Pollution project and some of the activities that we've been doing as part of the project.
Thank you, Hannah, and thanks, Jack, and everyone else for having us today here. So, preventing plastic pollution is a partnership project that we have been running for nearly 3 years in partnership with 18 organizations across France and the UK. The main goals of this project were to understand the types of plastic pollution that are found in the 7 pilot catchment. And by understanding what they are, we've tried through different activities to identify its sources and pathways to the river and to the marine environment. And we have tried to identify the hotspots for plastic pollution in the catchments that we worked on, and then implement some solutions such as trialing different approaches and devices to remove plastic pollution from the environment, and use all the data we have been collected to engage with multiple stakeholders, including communities, schools, local authorities, water companies, and all sorts of people in the capacity of individuals and representatives of communities and businesses to understand how we can support them into moving away from plastic pollution. So here you see the target areas. We had 4 catchment in the UK and 3 in France. And the fil rouge of this project was this area all share the water, the catchment, the river that constitute this catchment and into in the channel, a side of cultural and historical features as well. So the catchment we worked on is the Medway in southeast of England, which mostly is found in the County Council of Kent, but partially also in East Sussex. And the what you see here is the work that our GIS team has done to identify risk factors of plastic pollution, such as presence of densely populated urban areas, the presence of motorways. What else was there? High density plastic activities.
Proximity to
sites.
local proximity to historical landfill sites and
Yes.
open spaces, points of interest as well. So where people tend to gather, those. So they added those layers in.
Yes, and then where you can see the darker red areas are those at higher risk of plastic pollution. And we use this information to deliver initiatives to understand. So once we identified some location, we tried and target those to test and trial different activities and devices to remove plastic pollution. But we also worked with Queen Mary University of London and a local organization called the Living River Foundation on the estuary to collect samples of the Medway water and get data on microplastics, which will be soon available on our website. In terms of the activities, we have worked with local communities running cleanup events. As you can see, we have tried and covered the entire catchment. We have tried and used multiple ways to run cleanups, whether it was on the beach, in the river itself, working with canoe clubs and paddleboarders. We have worked with volunteers wading and clean up riverbanks, as well as nearby areas to the river where the wind and the other element would then bring litter and yes, all sorts of various bits of litter to the river. We also ran a successful volunteering program called the River Guardians, where we provided training and equipment for volunteers to clean up and look after the river in their own time, as opposed to be able to attend our one-off cleanup events. And they have been also collecting data on the types of litter that we removed using a form, litter categorization form, which Anna is going to talk to you through in a minute. We also worked with Kent County Council to trial some devices to trap litters before it reaches the waterways. As you can see on the picture on the right-hand side, we have trialed these drain guards, which come in a sort of a cone shape with a large base that can be cut to the exact shape of the drain guard, and then of the drain, and then it's hinged onto the grater on top, and then has a cone shape that traps all the bits of litter and lets water go down. And we trialed them for about 6 months with the collaboration of the local council, who would help us with equipment for opening, emptying, and reinstalling the drain guards. And we have run again some litter categorization to understand potentially where the litter that was found inside would come from. And we noticed a different composition of litter based on the footfall of the area that we selected. And other partners in preventing plastic pollution have been trialing other devices, which turned out to be really effective, such as the retention nets you can see on the left. We were not able to do that in the UK, unfortunately, but the results of what can be trapped are really interesting. And all this work has been also really useful to raise awareness with passers-by, local authorities, and the wider public in general to start talking about litter in rivers and how much our behavior influence the presence of litter and plastic pollution into rivers. As I mentioned, we did categorize all the litter that we found. We did this with what we called citizen science activity. So at the end of all the cleanup events and trials of the various devices, we we weighed the bags and we emptied them on a tarpaulin and sort them into piles per category using the form you see on your right hand side, and compiled it as a sort of a tally chart to then report onto a wider project database, which shows how much of each plastic or litter item we have found and removed from the environment.
Yeah, so as Gloria said, all of that data we've collected over all of the cleanup events and people going out themselves and collecting that data, that's all been uploaded onto the Preventing Plastic Pollution website. So this now holds a huge database of all of this data. So you can see the type of litter pick or cleanup that happened, the location of it, how many people were involved, the weight of what's collected, and then you get a breakdown of everything that's found. So you can see there the screenshot I've taken. Plastic and polystyrene is by far and away the thing that people find the most when they do these cleanups. And I think it's sort of, I want to talk about this because it seems like a really mundane task to go through all of the litter that you've just collected and count it and categorize it. But actually, this is a really, really important tool for change, because we know that plastic is present, but what we don't know is the type or who produces it or how often it's found. So by categorizing that data and creating that data set, you then have a really, really powerful tool to then go forward and create targeted interventions and use that data effectively. So out of all of the sort of activities that have happened over the Preventing Plastic Pollution project, there's been loads that have happened, but I've just taken out a couple of results, which I think are sort of, they're quite easy to get your head around. So of all the cleanups and all the people going out and litter picking, we've removed over 100 tons of waste. So that's across all of the project areas that we showed you at the start. We've engaged over 1,000 volunteers, which again is a lot of people who are giving their time. We've got 456 plastic champions. So these guys go out on their own, they do their litter pick, and they categorize that data, and then they upload it to the website. So they have quite a key role actually in collecting and uploading all of that data to the website. We've engaged with 250 businesses and 383 local businesses through training events and asking people to sign up to make a commitment really to reduce their plastic usage. And then we've also done over 450 education events. So that's working with school kids and running workshops and education around plastic pollution and how rivers are a key driver of that pollution. So what can we do then as either individuals or community groups? What sort of role can we play in this bigger picture of global plastic pollution. So I've noted down a couple of points here that are part of our project. So you can go out yourself and you can do a litter pick. And I know that the trash anglers, you guys are amazing at doing this. So you can also become a river guardian, which is very similar, I suppose, to what the trash anglers do. And what essentially is you make a commitment and you say that you're going to adopt a local stretch of river, you're going to go out and you're going to look after it and you're going to do a litter pick, which again is just a really important way of protecting just a small stretch of river. I've said it before, but collecting data is a really important part, I think, because you can go out and you can litter pick, but if you don't know what you're collecting, then it's really difficult to then inform a targeted response to that. So you're able to collect data via our Plastic Champions network, so we can give you the tools to be able to do that. You can also talk to local businesses and local council to get them again to just engage in the role that rivers have in plastic pollution and why we really need to protect them, because you know, they're really bad for wildlife, fish. Wildlife can ingest plastic, they can get entangled in it. So it's really key that we look after these ecosystems that are already quite degraded. You can also just challenge yourself. You can talk to the people around you and try and avoid single-use plastic, especially. I think single-use plastic have a lifespan of about 8 seconds from the point that you buy it to when you discard it. So and yet it lasts in our environment for years and years. So I think if you can avoid single-use plastic, and I think I'm probably preaching to the choir with people watching this, that they already know that, but it's a really important one. And then finally, then I think maybe just to try and end on something a little bit more positive. I know for me the issue of plastic pollution can seem very daunting, and you know, in terms of our river ecosystem, that when you go out and you see plastic a lot, it's quite upsetting because it's always there. But I think it's important to remember that we can only do what we can do, and community groups like the Trash Anglers and the Fly Connection are really important, and they're really positive movements at affecting and reducing plastic pollution in our rivers. So I've left you with a quote. We don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. And actually, you can apply that to absolutely everything, not just zero waste living. You can apply it to, you know, picking up litter or saying no to a single-use coffee cup, whatever it is. We don't need everyone doing it absolutely spot on all the time. We need everyone to, you know, to care and do their bit. So I think that probably does feed in nicely to the Fly Connection and the Trash Anglers. So thank you. Thanks for having us.
And thanks very much for giving us that paper that presentation this evening. That was really fascinating. We've had a question or two come in. I think we'll go to the first one more specifically. The question is whether you could explain a bit more about the plastic chain, so from plastics themselves all the way up to humans, and how sort of that consumption happens. So I guess the chain from plastics to zoobenthos and then up.
So we focus mostly on the litter, so when the end of life of plastics. So everything we are going to say now is not work related. It could be more like our personal experience and discussions that we had with community groups and other people that are as interested as, I guess, everyone else in this room. There is, you know, plastic itself, it is a great material. It made human life a lot simpler because it's really durable. You know, we use the term plastic, but there are multiple and endless types of it, which show great flexibility of polymers, which can be adapted to all sorts of different use. So much that honestly anything you can think of we deal with on a daily basis is made of plastic. From, I don't know, just having a look in my bedroom, plant pot or components of our laptops and phones and synthetic fibers of everything, pieces of our shoes, all sorts of material include a synthetic percentage and therefore some plastic. How, so probably for generations like ours and youngers and probably even the older one, it's kind of the norm to be surrounded by plastic in our life, and probably in recent years, the cheap cost, the decrease of cost of producing it from scratch allowed a wider use before the alarming information, or the spreading of its impact on the natural environment became of a wider concern. I think single-use plastic items are really suit our frenetic way of life a lot more than anything else, especially for certain cultures where you don't really have the idea of having to sit down for a meal and use I don't know, reusable normal kitchenware, but it's on the go. It really suits Western and many other cultures. So whose fault is it? Is everyone's. It's legislators who don't ban it, or who adopt very mild and transitory how do you say, measures. And on the other hand, there is the support they have to give the industry to adapt, to adopt alternatives material. On the flip side, there is people being careless and used to be comfortable to what they've always used and the prices they used to pay, and probably a lot of us being reticent or adverse to change and invest more in alternative materials. And then there is the producer, because a lot of producers or packaging, for example, food producers, or I don't know, clothing producers and maker, they could proactively swap to different packaging or to different materials, and some of them are doing it, some are doing it in response to the public, but still it's not the response is not as quick and how do you say, so it's not just in a short time, but it's also not complete is transition towards. So I don't know, Anna, would you like to add anything?
I just had a thought while you were talking, that I think what certainly the single-use plastic, I think it really forces you to confront the convenience of your own life, I think, because you're right, it's we all have a responsibility to it, and I think it can maybe it can feel quite uncomfortable when you're sort of forced to confront your own habits and actually your own convenience and challenge that. And I think that can be quite uncomfortable, but I think it's important, and it's important we all do it, and like you say, we all have responsibility to it. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right, and that sort of sense of responsibility, I think increasing numbers of people feel it. I don't know if that was your impression over, say, the 3 years that the project had been running, that you felt the discourse around it was changing.
I know that people that I spoken to, this project it's really brilliant to meet people who really care, and I mean, Gloria's been on this project a lot longer than I have, so she'll be able to maybe talk about if it's changed or not. But I think all the people that I've spoken to who've been involved all really, really want to do something, but they're not necessarily sure how they can do something, because like I said in the presentation, this issue is huge. and there aren't always really obvious avenues for you to either be involved in some way or change the way you live and your habits. That's not always necessarily obvious, but I know that people do really care and they do want to help. So I don't know if you've noticed a change there, Gloria, in the project.
I think, as you say, the hardest culprits are a bit harder to reach in terms of people who litter and who tendentially have those habits of not even notice that their actions have an impact on the environment. So maybe changing attitude with them and trying to like getting them on board would produce a bigger impact, but they are the hardest to reach and the hardest to engage. So with them, probably we will see bigger results once legislation changes and if there is ever enforcement implemented. What we've seen, obviously, all our partners have been working with lots of people who wanted to start changing and to drive change with people who work with them. For example, DEA, the Environment Agency in the UK, was one of the partners, and they created a plastic champion network across all their departments and different offices in the country. And they have implemented several changes at work, and that's been important. As well as we have been working with many schools across all the age groups, which might have a small impact at the moment, but it's really important for the future, for the long-term implementation of behavioral change. Some of our partners, like Brest Metropole, that is a local authority in Normandy, and Plymouth City Council, implemented a sort of a citywide plastic-free charter of action. I don't know the details, so I'm not gonna say things that are my mistake, but of course that entailed involving lots of different businesses and actors who are based in the center of the cities. And of course it gives an example of leading by example, so it's really useful for other towns and cities of similar I don't know, demography, economy and size to see that others have done it, to be inspired and communicate and start bringing change within other cities and towns. And the whole idea of our project was to be short and to be a pilot. So everything that we have done, we've tried to cover different situations, different conditions of the river, and to be able to have a wide range of everything that we have tested, so that we could produce case studies and publish them, so that others can learn from our experience and from our data collected, to be able to replicate or to adapt to their own situation and see what can be done locally.
I mean, laying that groundwork is always, absolutely fundamental. And particularly what you're saying about, being at cities, sort of doing charters and that kind of thing is also, I think, quite inspirational. But to sort of return to your earlier point about maybe the usual suspects and about the kind of change that will affect them, we have a question that's come in that wants to know about the sort of whether, I suppose, preventing plastic pollution has been involved in sort of direct lobbying in either Whitehall or Brussels for that kind of change.
Brussels is in the European Union, or
which presumably that's the text of the question.
I don't think with the European Union directly, because I haven't heard about this. One of the partners is DEFRA. So for those who don't know, is the Department for Environmental and Rural Affairs in the UK. So DEFRA wants to launch a deposit return scheme in 2024, piloted, and Preventing Plastic Pollution has provided their department with information about the urgent need for such a thing in the UK. We have provided information about the desire of people to have access to facilities and solutions for end-of-life plastics to use, as well as the desire for changes within the legislation to happen to support people who, yes, they have consumer power when purchasing goods, but they also need legislation to go hand in hand and support us in this transition away from single-use plastic.
And I suppose, you know, that kind of change is maybe more readily possible in some places than in others. You know, you've had the sort of European cooperation with the project, and in the UK, you know, we have sufficient resources, being financial, but also as you've shown, you know, with the wonderful cases of the Guardians, also that kind of social interest, that kind of cultural interest there. But we have a question here which asks a bit about, I suppose, establishing a sort of pilot or developing a program in the context of a country with no infrastructure at all for recycling plastic. This is the Bahamas. So the question is, what advice or information can you provide in helping build appropriate infrastructure or programs for recycling? I mean, at least where would one start, I suppose, is the question.
I'm I can speak for stuff that doesn't go quite right here, and maybe that's something that you could try and avoid, I suppose, when you're setting up your own recycling system. But I know in the UK it's so confusing. You can be in the same postcode, so the same area or town where you live, and your recycling, the recycling collection can be completely different with what is collected. So I think you want to make it as easy as possible for people to understand and know what can be recycled. I know in some countries have a colour coordinated system, which is universal across the country. So wherever you are in that country, you know that green means paper, you know that blue means plastic, and that so wherever you are, it makes it simple and easy. And again, I think if you're trying to embed, I think I'm talking slightly more about behaviour change rather than the infrastructure, but if you're trying to embed that habit, you need to make it as convenient for people to recycle as possible. That doesn't quite answer the question, but that would be my initial advice.
Sorry, what was the question? What was about infrastructure as well?
Yeah.
So what advice can you provide in helping build appropriate infrastructure and then sort of programs as well? So I think sort of Hannah's spoken in the context of quite, I think, a hard question quite ably on that.
Yeah, just to add to what Hannah said, maybe if really there's nothing happening at the moment, there are for sure elements that can be drawn from PPP. I think Bahamas being an island nation, they definitely have culturally a relationship with the sea, the marine environment, and for them, it's probably something they have to deal on a daily basis to be faced with the impact of plastic pollution on the marine environment. And of course, you have to try and run everything at the same time, meaning the deployment of infrastructure with campaigning and raising awareness. And they will need funds. So starting over, it would be really like the initial cost would be high. one of our partners is PNMI. It's an authority that manages a small archipelago of islands in Normandy, and they have trialed schemes to recycle end-of-life boats that would be normally abandoned on these islands. They have piloted the deployment of new systems to collect waste, because these islands are barely inhabited for 3 seasons a year, whereas in summer they are overly populated. So the existing infrastructure cannot support the waste production that they have over summer. And as well, alongside with that, they also had they contracted some specialists that use boats to reach some areas that were otherwise impossible to reach, to clear them from rubbish, such as tiny bays or caves where the flow of water brought waste in, and accumulation of litter has been an issue for a long time. So what we can say in terms of, like, from our experience at work, we can probably help networking, provide resources that our partners have made, but we don't have first-hand experience of starting an infrastructure service from zero.
No, I'm sure that's. I mean, generally, most people don't have sort of that unless particularly if they're working in Europe. Yeah, I mean, for me, what I thought was really striking about it was, I mean, the problem truly is sobering. I mean, the scale of it, and also when you think in the context of, I mean, humanity, how rapidly this is happening, and our inability to kind of react to that. But you know, throughout that, you were saying about particularly the sort of plastic champions and the River Guardians, I thought was kind of a really inspiring part of it. I mean, that's sort of a lot about the kind of idea that inspires trash anglers as well. I suppose I had a kind of couple of questions which related a bit to that, where that kind of overlaps what we're trying to do. So you were talking about your plastic champions. It was a phrase that sort of stuck in my mind. And I said, so what happens to the plastic champions in the UK now? Do they become River Guardians? And the sort of the second joint question is, the Guardian scheme, is that in the UK or is that across the European Union?
So the River Guardian scheme that we specifically run as an organisation exists in the River Medway catchment, because that was our project area. And the same goes for our Plastic Champions Network. So when you sign up and become a River Guardian, you can sign up and just commit to doing your litter pick, and then we can give you that kit to be able to do that. If you're more interested in doing the data collection and categorizing, then you can sign up as well as becoming a River Guardian. You can become a Plastic Champion. So again, it's completely optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. Yeah, you sign up. We give you an information pack on how to do it, and we give you the resources and then it's categorization. But again, that exists for our projects. That has existed in the River Medway catchment.
Okay, but is there a sort of equivalent thing? Do your partners run something like that, or I just think sort of the people who might be sort of connected tonight or who are part of the Fly Connection, I'd say the preponderance of them are in Europe as opposed to the UK. So are there similar programs that they could get involved with that you know of?
I think generally, what I noticed, especially during the pandemic, local authorities would provide you with litter picking equipment. If they don't, it's not, I mean, it's not ideal that you have to buy your own one, but it's not a high cost. And there are some equipment that's made with recycled plastic that's been rescued from, that's been made by recycling recovered angling gear, like fishing nets from the from Cornwall, I think. So there are several ways to do it. So, for example, in Italy, where I'm from, I know that there are some charities you can sign up with, and they send you the equipment at home. The only thing maybe I haven't been really clear of is that our project was funded through a program, part of the European Union, back when the UK was part of the European Union, but it did not involve the EU as a overall. It was just France and some part of France and part of England. So there might be lots of different activities happening and different initiatives that we are not really aware of. Say, for example, in Germany, where the deposit return scheme is a thing that's been running for decades, you hardly see any bottle or sort of packaging around because people can collect it, bring it to a supermarket, return it through a machine that reads the barcode through a scanner, and then gives you a voucher that you can spend in the supermarket. So that there's hardly any litter around.
I think, sorry, just on a complete side note, away from the plastic champions, I sort of thought about it earlier when we were talking about recycling. And as Gloria's mentioned, the deposit return scheme, I think what's really important is we start attributing a value to our waste. You know, we call it rubbish or we call it waste. You know, those very words literally mean that we just don't need it. But actually, there's real resource in the stuff that we throw away or ends up in our rivers. I think what the deposit return scheme does really, really well is it attributes then a value to that resource so that it is put back in that system again. And I think the more we can move to that sort of way of thinking about the things that we throw away, the less it's going to end up in our river systems, really. It's just a side note that I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but that's a really important point. Yeah, and I mean, I'm also kind of interested, I suppose, in about sort of the chain, and also making change, not just in people's behaviors themselves, but also in kind of supply chains and kind of what's happening as well, because obviously that's, you know, always going to be a really important part of the equation. And something which I'd kind of come across, but I was curious about, guys, is a brand audit. You know, at the moment, sort of with trash anglers, we're encouraging. The idea is that when anglers go and fish, they always see rubbish. Pretty much, it depends where you are, but often you do. And when you do, you tend to pick it up, not because you think about it, but because you just clean up like that. So we thought, well, what about finding some way of kind of celebrating that and kind of putting a value on trash, if only but to say, look, these are trophies from the river. There's sort of a humorous side to it, but yeah, to sort of get people out and sort of doing that kind of thing. Does the kind of idea of, because you know, granularity is important in your data. Clearly, that's been absolutely essential to the pilot that you've been doing. But in the context of somebody picking up sort of a couple of cans or something like that, you know, that it's, I suppose, it's more sort of high level stuff. So would a brand audit, you think, be a kind of powerful way of, you know, when people take an image of rubbish or report it, that may be a simpler way than doing a kind of granular analysis of, you know, 100 pieces or something?
Personally, I think yes. I think it goes one step further than categorizing the type of litter, because, like you say, you know who made it. Basically, it's got their brand slapped on a bit of litter. So, yes, I think again that's an incredibly powerful tool to be able to challenge key stakeholders that maybe don't want to be a part of the conversation or a reluctance to be a part of the conversation. I think it can, be a very powerful tool, and I think it's really important to be able to do it.
I agree, it's important. I think one doesn't exclude the other, because in the litter categorization, you find lots of items that don't have a brand on it, or that the brand is no longer readable or visible. So when you can do it, and Keep Present ID has been doing it for many years, they've been able, you know, to address big fast food company and get them to have change some of the packaging into non-plastic ones, as well as, you know, have a member of staff that's constantly cleaning up, picking up litter, especially in drive-in sites, or just around parking lots around the restaurants, as well as I think some powerful TV show. There was one a few years ago. I always forget the names of the people who ran it. I'll look it up. But anyway, they went and addressed the main how do you call them, wet wipes producers in the UK, and they obtained that some of them removed plastic from ingredients or elements used to make wet wipes. And if you go into the mall, you'll find several wet wipes. At least this was our experience. But also working with some big retailers such as Boots, which is beauty, pharmacy, and I don't know how else to describe it. Big, massive chain in the UK, and Tesco, that's a massive supermarket, at least for the UK Tesco. They have phased out, or they are phasing out, all the brands of wet wipes that contain plastic. So you will see in the new packaging, it says, still do not flush this, but they do not contain plastic. So as an answer, yes, calling out brands is useful.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, I think so too. I mean, you recognise time after time particular culprits. You mentioned, Gloria, sort of briefly before about your experiences. You were giving me a kind of couple examples there. I mean, I know now that you've had the kind of concluding conference for preventing plastic pollution, so sort of that project is kind of coming to an end. I wondered about the sort of some of your experiences or reflections on that. What were the I don't know, biggest shocks that you either found as rubbish or you found out during the course of doing the work? Maybe the best surprises. I don't know. I'm just curious to kind of hear your impressions. Now you can reflect on it a bit.
The nicest was the message in a bottle. We didn't open it, but we found on a beach a plastic bottle with a letter inside. And yeah, that kind of gives, the romantic idea that someone still might try and reach someone else via water courses, although maybe in a less polluting way would have been even more romantic. And one shocking element, Hannah can confirm. I don't remember if you must have been there already in October when we went to Maidstone and we had Preventing Plastic Pollution away day all together with the wider Southeast Rivers Trust team. We crossed, I don't know if you can call that a bridge, that goes over the main road and connects two of the main stations of this city, goes over a business center as well that has buildings of different heights, and just below this bridge there was a flat roof building, and it was covered into single-use disposable vapes, because I think vaping became really popular, but then you had to buy all the different bits of the machine and then the recharge, the different flavors, whereas these ones are like simple sort of cylinder tubes with a pipe end, so you can vape and then throw it away. So I don't remember, it's a brand that launched this new design and they're really, really popular. And I think as they spread out, people, you can find so many of these. And I think these have been a lot more shocking visually than, I don't know, masks during the pandemic, or I think that, and crisp packets and all these snacking packaging are the most shocking in terms of numbers that you can find at once in a place. Hannah,
I
what
think
do you say?
perhaps sort of a less specific answer, but I think for me, whenever we've done cleanups, when we go to the location that we're going to do the cleanup, when I do the site walk over before the event, I always think, oh, I don't think there's enough litter for volunteers to be occupied for the 2 hours that we've booked them in. And every single time without fail, we could have kept going for, the entire day. And I will never not be shocked by how much litter and bags and shopping trolleys and bits of I found a car door and a chair, I will never not be shocked by the stuff and the volume that we find in a seemingly relatively clean place. I think for me, that's one of my biggest takeaways. And I think actually that what that says to me is that litter is everywhere, plastic is everywhere, and we just kind of don't see it anymore because we've just become a bit desensitized to it a bit. I think when you're not looking for it, it sort of fades into the background a little bit. So I think, for me, that's probably one of my biggest takeaways from running volunteer cleanups.
I think that's really interesting about, you say that, people don't see it. But I mean, there's a bit of me that wonders also that maybe we can't see it or we just won't see it. It's it's become too normal. So we don't register it. We need something to sort of wake us up and make us think a bit about it. I mean, having heard what you thought about sort of being sort of shocking or surprising, I mean, how has it made you feel, the sort of project or just your experiences in it, about the prospects for something happening? Because we know that the gravity and the urgency, has it sort of left you feeling like hopeful that we may get somewhere, or that there are solutions, or
From my experiences and running more of the delivery side of it, it's a real dichotomy between feeling really hopeless about the amount that we collect every single time, and then that sort of coupled with the absolute sheer passion of volunteers and the dedication to come out and pick up rubbish in the rain for 2 hours. So yes, there is absolutely hope because there are a lot of people that really, really care. And I think we have to hold on to that because, what's left if there isn't that. So, I think they're my two. They kind of run together, frustration and hope at the same time.
I think a lot of us who sort of work in the outside world in some way, trying to make it better, often feel those kind of dichotomies. Anybody who has any, I think, passion or feeling for the outside world goes from those moments of sort of despair to kind of hope, and having something to do and to try and be part of the solution. I think is, I mean, speaking of myself personally, but also I think people who are involved with the Fly Connection and elsewhere, that's sort of one of the things that helps us keep going.
I think
I think
a group and a community group again are really important, and I think if you can find that, and you guys obviously have that community group, I think for hope and for practical ways of feeling like you're engaged and you're doing something, I think it can never be underestimated.
I mean, well, let's hope we all carry on in that spirit then. I think we've taken up almost an hour of your time, so I think that's probably, you've had more than enough questions from me and from the audience. I suppose all that remains to say is again, thank you so much. It's been incredibly interesting. I'm sure people have taken away quite a lot. Yes, I suppose we'll be delighted at some point in the future if you're working on further programs or you'd like to talk to us again, give us another message of hope about the future for pollution or other things, and that would be great. Just as kind of for anyone who is watching, we're arranging a trash collection on the 1st of April on the River Wandle in South London. So if you're able to come down, it would be great if you can join us for a day of sort of fishing and trash collection, lots of chatting rivers and pollution and all the rest of it. And yeah, to draw things to a close. So thanks very much, guys. I think we're going to drop off the stream now. I'll just wait for confirmation.
Yeah, I would say thanks to you for having us to the Fly Connection, to everyone who attended, and please feel free to share our emails if they want to reach out. Our project website is preventingpollution.com if you want to look for resources and connect on social media as well. So you can see all the partners who took part and what they've been working on. Thank you again.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Chico, are we streaming?